We're going to the garage, Daniel. Damn. Dang. Garage is a mess. What the hell? Oh, this thing not shut. Come on, buddy. Alright, Jesus Christ. Alright, looks like everything's working good. So yeah, this is my first GoPro video. I finally got around to getting a GoPro. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I was using my phone to record everything, and I don't know, I just think the GoPro's probably better. There's probably going to be a lot of movement because I have this thing like strapped onto my head. So I'm not really used to wearing one, so maybe I'll try not to move too terribly much, but there's going to be a lot of movement in this video. Anyways, I want to make this video to talk about, you know, should you guys buy a VA STI or a VB WRX? There's tons of videos on this. I've read lots of comments, like on Facebook, people talking about it, discussing it. But I think a lot of people are not, they haven't driven both, you know. And from my perspective, I have this 19 STI. This is a series gray with 11,000 miles on it. Pretty damn good shape. And then I also have a 21 STI out on the driveway with ethanol. You know, it's got E85 on it, and it also has a 20G turbo. So that one drives quite a bit different than this. You know, this one still has the VF48 on it. But anyways, long story short, you know, I got a decent amount of experience driving these. You know, I've owned this 19 for a couple months, and then I own my 21 STI for the past about 2 years now, I think. So definitely a decent amount of driving on them, and have a pretty decent idea of what it's like to maintain one, what it's like to drive one. For the VB WRX, pretty much I went to a dealership to go buy an Outback XT, and I ended up test driving one of the VB WRXs. If I remember right, it was a 22 VB WRX. And it had the, you know, it's got the FA24F in it, which is a pretty damn good engine. So I guess maybe just starting there, you know, like, after driving both of them, you know, I drove to the dealership in my STI, and then I test drove the VB WRX, and then I, of course, went home with the Outback and the STI. And it was almost like night and day. And I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that. I don't know how many VB potential buyers or maybe people that own VB WRXs are going to hear this. I mean, I don't have a large channel at all, so maybe it won't offend too many people, but dude, honestly, like, it really is like night and day. Just with how the cars drive, how the engine responds and all that. The best way to put it is that, I mean, even just looking at this EJ here, you can tell that this EJ, these STIs, it's really like looking at like a time capsule. Like, I've owned a lot of 90s cars, and the EJ, to me, it's like working like on a 98 freaking Eclipse, like a DSM or something like that. It's just old school, like, in every single way. And it's fun because you have this old school engine, but it's in a modern chassis. So the power delivery comes on like abruptly. You know, I feel like an STI with the VF48 hits like at 3,000, 3,500 is probably the sweet spot. It has a lot of mid-range punch, but it doesn't have much before that. And then it doesn't even have much after that. You know, it's really like 3,500 to 4,500. That's pretty much like your power band. When I drove the VB, it felt like the turbo spooled up quicker and you had a lot of torque, but then that was it. You know, there wasn't like any more rush of boost, and it wasn't like really like thrown in my face. I didn't feel like it really put me in the seat the way that like an STI would. You know, I felt like there was a little bit more torque from the STI. But all, you know, the engine specs aside, I mean, if you asked me right now, what's a better engine? I would say definitely the F824F. The EJ257 is very old. It has a timing belt system versus a timing chain. So like when you gotta do the timing belt, you gotta take off all this stuff. I actually did the timing belt on this not too long ago, but you gotta take all this stuff off. It's really annoying, and I really wish that it was less maintenance intensive. I wish I didn't have to replace that belt. They say every 100,000, but I usually do them about 60. This car it was already 7 years old almost when I got it, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and replace time belt. Anyway, so yeah, more maintenance on these. The compression's a lot lower. I think on the 19 pluses the compression ratio is 8.1, and then on a VB I don't actually know what the compression ratio is. Is it 10.6? I don't really know. Maybe someone can comment on it. But I want to say it's high. I want to say it's like 10.6 or something like that. Could be wrong, but regardless, it's definitely going to be a moderate amount higher than the STI. The STI definitely has that very, very low compression, and I think that probably has to do with the size of the bore. Typically, when you have an engine with a large bore, they're more prone to detonation, and so you have to retard the timing. You can't run as much boost. They're more likely to experience that detonation. So I think that was kind of part of the reason for that really low compression ratio. And that's another reason why the EJ can really benefit from E85. Now the F824F, if I recall, it has a smaller bore and it's also smaller displacement. And so the smaller displacement, the smaller bore, both of those things, in my opinion, are going to kind of lean towards that detonation resistant path. On top of that, the F824F also has the direct port injection, which allows for better fuel atomization, which allows you to run higher compression as well. So the F824F is a superior engine to the EJ257. Looking at the transmission of an STI, they're both 6 speeds, but I'm not going to get into it because I think everyone already knows the STI 6-speed's known for being bulletproof, 600 horsepower plus, you can make on. They don't really make too much of a fuss. Whereas a WRX, I've heard 400 is kind of the limit, but I'm sure there's people out there probably doing close to 500 or more. If you really baby it, I assume that you can make that power, but I want to say the feel of the transmission is going to be different between the STI, because I want to say that the STI is direct, right? And the VB has cables. If that's my understanding, when I drove it, I kind of feel like the shifter, the way it shifted felt a lot different. It was more spongy. So I believe that is correct. But I think and this is what's kind of weird, is that, in my opinion, when I drove the VB WRX, what was truly night and day between the two cars was the suspension. And I say it's weird and it's odd because on paper, it doesn't sound bad. It sounds like the chassis had improved rigidity. I think I don't know how true this is, but I think someone said that around a track, the VB performed just as good or maybe even better than an STI as far as how it took the corners and how it braked and stuff like that. But even if that's true, and this is where the STI shines, this is the reason why you would buy an STI over a VB. The way that the STI drives compared to a VB is drastically different. The VA feels extremely planted to the ground, like in stock form, extremely planted to the ground. The brakes are excellent. The suspension is really good. When I first bought one of these and I drove it, I was like, holy crap. Like, I did not know that this is what I was missing for the past, however many years. And I had cars, I had my SC300, which was a heavy car, but it's been pretty stripped down. The interior's all there, but the car doesn't have air conditioning and shit like that. So it's had some rate reduction there. It got swapped from an auto to a manual, and it has coilovers, and it's got suspension braces on the front and the rear, like really big stabilizer bars. I'm talking like extremely thick. This car was tracked. The car that I have is tracked. I haven't tracked it, but the previous owner did. Anyways, I thought that I was buying, like when I had my SC300, I was like, man, this is like the pinnacle, this is great. But then when I drove the STI, I was like, dude, this is like a totally different type of car. You could take a corner going like, 60, 70 in this. Like, let's say you're going around a corner that's rated for like 20 or 30, dude, you can go through it going like 60 or 70 in STI, and you're really not going to break too much of a sweat in it. But anyways, back to the VB. So the problem I had with the VB was that it just felt really spongy and bouncy in the corners. Like, it leaned a lot, it didn't feel planted, and it's like, even if the specs are close to the same, even if the car brakes almost as good, even if the car somehow, I don't know how, but even if it did somehow handle as good as an STI around a track, it doesn't feel the same when you're driving the car. And that's the difference between an STI and a WRX. And I don't think it's any one certain thing. It's like the old school engine design. It's the direct, shifting transmission. There's no cables. It's the hydraulic power steering. It's the big brakes. It's the suspension that's on it. All that put together just makes it feel a certain way. Even if you went crazy and really updated that WRX to have big brakes, and you put coilovers on it, and you put a bigger turbo on, and you're running ethanol, and you're making like 450 or 500, it's not going to drive and feel the same as an STI because of all the factors that go into it. And so when you look at it that way, you really got to think about the nostalgia that you have. If you're younger, like under like 25, then the VB probably makes a lot more sense than for someone that's in their 30s or 40s that used to drive DSMs or SRT4s or, whatever, Evo, whatever tuner cars from back in the 2000s or the 90s. It's like, if you have that experience of driving those cars, or you grew up driving those cars, then you're going to love the STI. And I remember one person was talking to me once about like a Civic Type R, and everything on paper, the Type R is better gas mileage. The engine's really good. Somehow it's faster in a straight line, it's faster around a track and all that crap. And it's like, even though the specs are better, it's not going to be an STI. It doesn't have that feeling. And that's I think why people drive an STI, because it has that nostalgic feeling when you drive it. When you drive that car, you feel that nostalgic feeling. You don't get that with the VB. When I drive the Outback XT that we bought, I don't feel like anything special about it. It's a really comfortable car. It handles good for an SUV. It gets really good gas mileage. The engine is very low maintenance. And it's a really, really good SUV. But it doesn't give me any feeling. You know what I mean? Then the STI gives you that. The VB WRX doesn't give you that. And like I said, even if you make everything on that WRX, you buy the coilovers, the turbo, the ethanol, whatever the hell you build it, whatever the hell you're going to do. Let's say it makes 600 horsepower. It's not going to drive the same as an STI. It just won't. It's just not going to have that feel. And the rumble's part of it too. Like I said, the whole thing's a package. And that's what you got to think about when you're buying a VB. If I'm buying a VB, to me, it's almost like I got to make a decision between buying a lot of other cars. If I'm going to buy a VB, I got to think, like, should I buy the Type R? Should I go buy oh man, I just stepped on some type of screw and made some type of funny noise anyways. Should I go buy a Corolla? Should I go buy this? Should I go buy that? Should I go buy a BMW? Like, dude, there's so many choices. But if you like 90s cars, if you like that old school feel, if you got to have that again, because all the 90s cars are old. They're old as shit. What is it, 35 years now? 30 years old? And this is probably the closest you're going to get to having a modern version of those that has the old school engine, the old school transmission. Here's another thing. There's no eyesight. I don't know if the VBs have eyesight. I don't know if the 22s had them, but I think maybe 23 and on did. Dude, that is the most annoying thing to have on a freaking car. And that's one thing to consider too. Dude, when you drive this thing, you are driving the car. You are driving the car 100%. Nothing's going to stop you from crashing into somebody. You just got to hit the brakes. There's no things to really assist you. Very minor assisting, right? So that's another thing to consider. It's really just like a really raw driving car. But I mean, back to like, I guess, what are the cons to the EJ? The cons to the EJ is that the engine's really sensitive. It's funny because like the EJ is really like one of the oddest motors I've ever had to deal with. Like, it's a performance engine, but like every day I drive it, I'm revving. I beat on my STIs. I rev them. I'm shifting about 4,000, 4,500, but that's mostly because of the 20G. But on this thing, I'm going to be shifting like 3,500. But it's like a tough motor, but in the inside, you're just like, it seems kind of fragile. But I don't really know. It just feels like that. It feels like, I think it's because it gets scared because of all the, they talk about the ringland failures and, you make over 400 horsepower, the whole thing's going to explode. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll find out how true that is. But anyways, long story short, the EJ257 is not as robust as the FA24F. The FA24F is more robust than the old EJ here. So that's one thing to think about. Plus, they're not making the damn thing anymore. So I think maybe not right now, but probably in the next couple of years, parts are probably going to get expensive for the EJ. And I've seen it with many cars, the DSMs, the Supras and the SC300s. Like, what happens is that it's like when they're still kind of popular, everything's cheap. You can go buy a short block for $2,500. You can go buy a transmission for $6,000 or $7,000 for the STI. But eventually what's probably going to happen is they're going to start running out of parts. And then you're going to start seeing short blocks for $5,000. At that point, you just buy an IEG. But, you're not going to be able to go to the Subaru dealer and get the freaking blocks. And the transmissions are the ones I'm the most worried about. Once you can't get that 6-speed, once Subaru's like, yeah, we're done with it, you're probably going to start seeing $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 for a transmission. Now, if they do come out with the new STI, we might be okay. But that's just something to think about. Now, for the VB, I would be much less concerned with that because it probably shares a lot of parts with a lot of the other modern Subarus out there. The FA24F is used in multiple Subarus. The brakes are probably shared. The suspension's probably shared with some other cars. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm sure Subaru's using whatever parts they can, across the lineup is what I'm trying to say. Whereas the VA STI, there's nothing with this engine. There's nothing with this transmission. It's just the STI. So it's a lot. It's going to probably the next couple of years, you're going to start seeing it. It's going to be hard to get parts for it. So, like I said, I really just wanted to make a video with my GoPro. So hopefully I didn't sound like I was just like, I don't even know, just talking nonsense for the past 18, 20 minutes. I would say, honestly, like, if you made it this far, like, I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. So if you guys can like the video and subscribe to it, that'd be great. What else do I want to say? Yeah, I would say like videos like this that I make, if I make them in the garage, eventually I'll make them like in the car while I'm driving. But right now, I'm just probably going to do a couple garage videos. Just put these on while you're driving to work. When you're driving to work or you're eating lunch or something, you put your earbuds in and just, you can listen to me talk for a little bit. That's really what that's what I'm kind of going for. I plan to make stuff, that's more actiony and stuff like that. But I think sometimes it's just nice to hear someone talk through a couple things. And I definitely probably missed a lot that you could talk about. I'm not going to talk about interiors or the way the cars look. If you ask me, I actually, I'll put it this way: with the exterior of the VB, I think the VA STIs look freaking like they look great looking car. But I also think a VB WRX, if you got the spoiler and maybe if you got everything, what's it called? These like fenders or whatever, when they're paint matched, they actually look pretty damn good. When you got that spoiler on, when you got the STI spoiler and you got the paint match and all that, they actually look, honestly, like I'd say comparable to the VA STI. Really good looking. Stock though, stock without the spoiler, stock without the paint match, the rear bumper kills me, dude. You really got to do the paint match and you got to do the spoiler, and then the bumper actually doesn't matter too much. But when it's stock and there's nothing, oh man, the bumper just kills me. So that's probably where I'll end there. But I don't know, hopefully, you took something away from the video. I really need to get better at maybe condensing things. I'll probably work on that in my next couple videos. And maybe if this one like gets bad ratings or something, maybe I'll just remake it and try and condense it and talk more about additional points and just really be more on focus versus just kind of mouthing off whatever's coming to my head, because that's what I did. I just kind of mouthed off whatever come to my head. Anyways, this video's getting too long. I'll talk to you guys later. Like I said, if you like it, if you like the content, just go ahead and like and subscribe. And I am really planning on greatly improving the content. I have to figure out a video editor, and then I also have to figure out exactly how I'm going to go about recording content, either with like the strap here that's on my head for the GoPro, or just mounting in the car, or maybe like a chest mount or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, I'll figure it out. So thanks a lot. Talk to you guys later.